Hey everyone, it's Jacqueline. Time to make another video topic. This topic has been all over the place, it's all over the media, it's all over Twitter, it's everywhere. And I wanted to get into it because I feel that there's a lot of misinformation that's used for an agenda. And I think it's projected onto the opposing side of trans people, and they pretend that trans people have an agenda in this thing, but really, the whole thing's just such a big joke. So we're going to discuss a few things. I'm going to talk a lot more about self-hatred. I've talked about it in my previous videos and how I believe that self-hatred is the motivation behind bigotry and closed-mindedness. And they will use opinions and false truths, and they'll manipulate and misconstrue things to fit their bigotry agenda, and they will do it so often that they'll even come to believe it's true. So let's talk about detransitioning. So there's been many studies over this. From 2010 to 2022, there was a study that came out that showed 8% of people detransition. It's a large percentage out of the whole, and everybody thinks, oh, that's a large percentage. You know, it's a risky thing to have 8% of people maybe go through gender reassignment surgery, breast augmentation, facial feminization, top surgery, whatever it is that you're doing, and then they detransition. But when you break down the percentages of that 8% of why people detransitioned, they ask them questions. It's not like they just detransition and they say, oh, I was abused by doctors. It's an easy, convenient place to put it somewhere and just blame it on someone. But what it boils down to is 0.4% of 8%, less than 0.1% of the trans community detransitions because they say the transition was not working for them. The rest of those percentages, especially in the 8%, the rest of that 8% of detransitioning people say it is because they were bullied. Their friends stopped being friends with them. Their parents kicked them out of the house. They didn't want to have anything to do with them. Obviously, they forced them and bullied them to detransition in the long run. They told them, you'll never be a woman, or you'll never be a man, or whatever you want to identify as. There's only men and there's only women, and this is just the way it is, science, biology, and don't bring that around here. Or they would misgender them or make fun of their pronouns. I mean, it's quite obvious that that's why someone would detransition that's currently dealing with gender dysphoria. 98% of children, this was a study posted in The Lancet, 98% of children that take puberty blockers between the ages of 13 up fully transition and live their lives happily as the gender that they chose when they were 13 years old, or at least they transitioned into what they thought they would be. And they live happy lives. That's literally a fact. 98% of children that choose to take puberty blockers that are fully reversible, they have no long-term side effects, they will pause your puberty, and then you get to continue your puberty later on, your natural puberty. There's no side effects to it whatsoever. There's a bunch of propaganda that bigots and people like that like to talk about on the internet, but science and doctors and all of this stuff, they basically prove that puberty blockers are fully reversible. So when they get to the age of, say, 16, they get to decide, hey, I might want to start HRT, hormone replacement therapy. Most of the time they start it at 17, but 16 is when they decide that this is the path they're going to go down. They go through therapy, they go through extensive research, they go through a lot of trauma, because these children are not just, oh, I'm going to transition. No. They're detransition or transition. It's not on a whim. It's not a fashion statement. Gender is very much something that is going to change everything. So when you look at clothing, for example, you have a men's and a women's section. 10 years from now, you're not going to have a men's and women's section. You're going to have a clothing section. People are going to be cross-dressing and doing whatever. There is no type of clothing that just fits a woman anymore. I like to wear men's clothing a lot lately. Actually, to be honest, I think everything I'm wearing right now is a men's outfit. But no one would know, because I just live my life as a woman other than that, and I present myself a certain way, and I'm very comfortable with myself being feminine. But in general, I like men's shoes. I think they look better. I like men's deodorant. I even like men's body wash. That smells so much better. Especially like being an athletic person. Anyway, beside the point. The world is changing, and whether or not you keep up with it is really your decision. And so you have people that have this pushback, this fear. They see it in their grandchildren, they see it in their children, they see more gender dysphoria coming out, they see more trans people, but the numbers aren't technically increasing. It's just that people are becoming aware that if they were a boy when they were born, they don't have to be a manly man as they grow up. And if they were a girl, they don't have to be a feminine woman growing up and birth babies and stay in the kitchen. That is a natural progression, that we're realizing that we're both quite capable of doing whatever we want as far as men and women are concerned. And then we have the other category, non-binary, which is quite a convenient category for people to be put into because they're one of those other people. Now, when it gets really interesting is when you're a very pretty trans woman and you tell women that you're a woman, then they get very upset because then they feel threatened. They're like, well, you're not really a woman, you know? So there's some of their own self-bigotry and insecurity, and that's where most of the pushback comes from. But people quite like people to look transgender. They enjoy it because it makes them feel like, oh, they're just one of those. You know, when you blend in and you blend in around their family and friends and their boyfriends hit on you or something like that, changes the whole damn subject. Everything gets really different after that. But that's beside the point. When we're talking about self-hatred and bigotry, I'm going to bring up 3 examples. These people, Matt Walsh, Dave Chappelle, and Blair White. I think I can go into Caitlyn Jenner, but she feel like she ruined herself anyway. She's doing it by herself. I don't even need to talk about it. But when we discuss people like, say, Matt Walsh created a documentary called What is a Woman, which is a stolen billboard from TERFs, actually, in England. They created a billboard, and underneath they said, it's an adult human female. At the end of his documentary, his wife is in the kitchen trying to open up a pickle jar, and she just can't. And he comes in all manly in his plaid shirt and his Wrangler jeans and walks up to her and asks her, what is a woman? And she says, an adult human female. Now, if you break that down, you say, adult, what is an adult? Does that mean that she's menstruating? Because if we look at it this way, Matt Walsh in 2014 on a podcast said that we should reconsider the age of consent because 16 to 24-year-old girls are the most fertile out of all women. So if we're going to save the white race, which is literally what he said, we need to, consider the age of consent with our fertile white women. How fucked up is that? And then when he addressed it, he was like, oh, cancel culture is coming for me now. And they're like, oh, and they didn't even know what he was getting canceled for. It's like they didn't even look into it. They're like, he's a total piece of shit. But they're so obsessed with drag queens performing in public that they think it's a sexual act. And if you want me to be honest, I think it's because they're secretly cross-dressers and they're into the kink of it and they are paranoid that other people are doing it. And so when they see a drag queen, they think, oh, sex, kink. No, drag queens are like clowns. Children love fucking clowns. I mean, look at them. They love that shit, you know? It's like music and stupid and ditzy and acting. They love that stuff. I don't even like drag queens. I think they're fine. I just think of them more as kind of like clowns than anything. Anyway, so I'll get roasted for that one. So when it comes to Matt Walsh, I think it's quite clear that a man that has invested this much into a subject, he doesn't care about children. He doesn't care about any of this. He's monetized, same with Blair White. Both of them have monetized an audience to watch them and send them money and commercialize this and get sponsors on their fake propaganda bigotry that feeds into stupid people that don't really know the statistics and the facts. Like Matt Walsh. And I think to myself, he knows that because in his documentary, if you watch it, he cuts out specific things. He literally edits out segments. And I'm like, that's so interesting. Why would he do that? Because he knows that he's full of shit. He knows he's full of shit. He knows he's lying. He knows that the stuff he's putting out there isn't true. And of course, it got fully debunked by Jessie Gender in a 4-hour breakdown of how Matt Walsh, it's called The Unending Lies of Matt Walsh. And Jessie Gender broke down the whole thing and pretty much canceled out his whole documentary. I mean, it's proven. But if you go on Twitter and you look at Matt Walsh's stuff, these dumbasses that don't even know the truth are so obsessed with these young people being castrated, which doesn't exist. These young people, there was a post recently about a top surgery on a trans man that was 13 years old. And everyone was like, well, where is this person? Who is this person? They couldn't tell him anything. It was literally an image of someone that was young that had top surgery. And they're like, look how they butchered them. But I was like, who is this individual? Do we have any proof that they're 13? Does anybody know? And no one knew. But they were like, oh, but they're doing it. I'm like, well, if you don't have any proof that someone's doing something, you can't claim that they do it. It's the most ridiculous shit ever. They've created this monster that doesn't exist. And if they tell themselves the same thing over and over, they start to believe it. It's wild. So why does that's back to the question. Why is it Matt Walsh is so incentivized to make stuff like this or talk about stuff like this? I believe, personally, that Matt Walsh is dealing with a massive amount of gender dysphoria. I think Matt Walsh has been dealing with gender dysphoria since he was a kid. I think there's a lot going on there. I don't think he's necessarily attracted to trans women. I think probably his wife and his kids and all this shit is probably completely a front. I think that man is dealing with some internal shit, and he needs his friends, his family, and all the people that he cares about to agree with him. And they do. They're all like, oh yeah, you know, those freaks, those doctors are castrated. No one's doing any of this. So Matt Walsh has literally created a documentary about how much he hates himself. And it is quite incredible. It is a masterful collapse, if you will, of someone really hating themselves. And I do actually pity Matt Walsh for that, because I see a lot of me before I transitioned in Matt Walsh. I see this, like, the plaid shirts, the Wrangler pants, the boots, but opening up a pickle jar for his wife at the end of his documentary because she couldn't, because women are weaker, and they belong in the kitchen evidently to him, and they're fertile at 16. It's fucked up. And to him, like, men belong here and women belong here, but meanwhile, he really hates himself. It's quite amazing. And he would rather ruin people's lives. He doxed a bunch of, like, hospital workers because they had gender affirming care, and psychologists. He doxed psychologists' home numbers, their houses, and put it so his followers would go harass them and attack them. It's quite amazing at the level that person will go to for hating himself. It's incredible. The other person is Dave Chappelle. I mean, it's no surprise to me, but the moment Dave Chappelle doubled down on his trans thing and then tripled down and started making it like his thing, I was like, oh, he's definitely dealing with some shit. Like, I like Dave Chappelle. I've always thought his comedy was quite funny about 10 years ago, and I was really into it, but why discuss this much? Like, no heterosexual man, no man that is confident within himself is going to discuss it this much and pretend that he doesn't know the truth about it. Dave Chappelle is quite clearly into trans women. You can look at him and tell. I don't know how people don't know these things about Matt Walsh, Blair White, and Dave Chappelle. Like, you could look at them and you're like, why do they do it like that? And you could just tell that they're full of shit. Like, Dave Chappelle obviously likes trans women. He's so attracted to them, he doesn't know what to do with that information. He can't have all his fans, his family, and all these people think he's gay because they're all bigots. So he's like, fuck, how do I deal with this shit? So he's like, okay, we'll just start making fun of it. No one will know that I'm into it. Meanwhile, the rumor around Los Angeles is he's hired all of the trans girls as escorts. None of them can say anything because they probably signed NDA agreements and stuff. But I believe, just from looking at that man, that I could clearly tell he's dealing with a trans attraction of some sort. So, why my mother keeps texting me. So, the other one is Blair White. So Blair White to me is fascinating. I find Blair White to be, because I am trans and she's a trans woman, and I look at her, and if you look at her whole plethora, her agenda of what she does, what she's monetized and made a business out of, is this character that she's created. It's like a cartoon. And people believe influencers are real. And I'm like, you do know they're acting, right? Like, you do know that they probably don't believe any of this stuff, but they know that their fans will eat it up. They will monetize it. They will get sponsors. They will make a lot of money off of it. They'll get on talk shows. They're famous. They've created this individual, this person, this fake person. And Blair, her most recent video about Dylan, the trans woman, not that I care for Dylan. I think Dylan's a little quirky and weird. The tampon thing was strange. But Dylan's intentions are actually quite pure in the end. Like, she's just trying to find herself, and she really has, like, some pretty decent points that she makes. I don't care for her because I think she's a little weird. But in the end, Blair White, her recent video of her said everything, her opening introduction to her video said everything I needed to know about Blair White. Blair White's laying in bed, and she's having nightmares with Dylan talking in the background. But if you look at Blair White, she has she has a ring light on her. She's laying in bed. She has a filter on her face. She's a full face of makeup. I mean, eyeliner, I think it's like up to like here, you know. She's got this, it's like drag, you know. So she's got this whole costume on. She's laying there and she's having nightmares about Dylan. Then she wakes up and has this personality that's so fake and so put on, and then she clutches her little cold brew coffee, and she's like, it's a prop at this point. It's like basic dumb girl prop. And then she relates with her audience with stupid shit. and she feeds into their bigotry, their propaganda, their nonsense. She'll fabricate it. She's been proven wrong so many times and debunked so many times. But her followers have deep transphobia within them. But they look at Blair. Most of them are men. They look at Blair and they're like, I'd still fuck her. Like, that's literally what they're thinking. So they're like, well, I'm okay with Blair. Let me see if I get the focus back. So they're okay with Blair, but they're not cool with trans people that don't pass, evidently. Like, her entire agenda that she has is, let me see, why won't I focus? Her entire agenda that Blair has created is based on bigotry and self-hatred. And Blair thinks that if she looks like a little caricature of what she thinks a woman should look like, if she looks like that, then she feels that she's loved, that she's accepted. The problem is she's loved and accepted by bigots that hate trans people, and if they had their way, they would toss her in asylum. Like, they still think you're a man, Blair. Like, I don't understand what the fuck you think you're doing. Just because they monetize you and they're like, oh, I love Blair. They love Candace Owens too. Like, they love people that they can use to fit their bigotry and agenda, but once it's done, they'll toss you in the trash can fast. So I find it quite sick that Blair has monetized off of people's bigotry, and with a character that's not even real. It's like this. I could go into that. It's like this fabricated cartoon creature that's full of shit. There's nothing authentic about Blair at all. And so you have those three people, and I believe self-hatred is really at the root source of it all. They just want people to like them. It just so happens that their families are probably conservative, their wives are conservatives, their boyfriends are conservatives. So they feel like they don't want to hate them. So they want to be like them, but negotiate. It's like a negotiation. They want to be like, well, okay, like, I can still hate trans people, but at the same time, like, I am trans. And I'm like, it's weird. And so, sure, like, I dealt with non-binary people internally with myself for a long time. The past couple of years, if y'all have caught up with my videos, I had a difficult time understanding what non-binary people were and why non-binary people identify as trans, but they don't have gender dysphoria. And then some of them do, but they don't present a certain way. And I kept trying to compartmentalize things and say, well, there's testosterone and estrogen. I believe you need gender dysphoria to identify as a trans individual. And the more I broke it down, I was like, it's my own issue. It has nothing to do with non-binary people. I'm just dealing with the fact that, like, with my being a trans woman, a non-surgical trans woman, dealing with that and knowing that it doesn't matter what I do with my body, that other people aren't going to accept me or change their view of me, coming to terms with that as an aging trans woman is quite jarring. And then you have this group of people that's non-binary, and they don't care if they look like a man or a woman. They're quite excited to just be here and be themselves and express themselves authentically. And then I see myself struggling with the world that doesn't accept me. And I'm like, y'all should be like me. What? Don't be like me, because it's been a fucking tough journey. If you're happy and you're a part of a group of people that's dating each other and you love each other and you're non-binary, by all means, love it. I'm jealous. I'm actually quite jealous. And so I believe that we all need to look inward and study ourselves and realize that our actions are really a reflection of what we don't like about ourselves at the end of the day. And our insecurities, our dysphoria, all sorts of stuff. And trans people deal with it a lot. These people who detransition and blame trans people and doctors and mental health professionals, they're just grouping up with a group of people that now pretend to like them. That's all they're doing. They need people to agree with them. And they're doing the same thing. It's quite sad. And I wrote a trans woman today. Actually, no, they're just a woman now on Twitter that really hates the trans community, detransitioned. And I wrote them, and I just said, I wrote the statistics about the percentage of people that detransitioned because it didn't work for them. And I reminded them that if you ever decide to come back to the trans community, you are more than welcome. We will love you and accept you for whatever you are. You wouldn't believe the hate I got from the right side just for doing that, from conservatives. They're like, how dare you? This isn't the time. This person's been abused. And I'm like, I'm simply saying that if you are ever going to transition again, you're welcome. You're welcome and we'll love you. They don't like that because they like thinking that trans people are evil and they're going to bully them and they're going to be like, all this shit. And I'm like, no, There's no reason for me to bully someone who detransitioned. I'm simply saying, like, just make sure that you know who you are, what you're doing, and when you take certain steps, what the repercussions of those steps are. And also understand your friends and family and the people in your life, they're biased. They're not going to accept you as trans, and you need to say, fuck them. And don't change yourself to fit in. And I do believe that a lot of people that actually the majority of people who detransition retransition. That's another study that's really interesting. Most of them retransition because they realize now's the right time. Now I've got a better job. Now I've got family members that are like more open-minded. Now it's more common to see it everywhere. And now they feel like I can transition now. But they detransition because they care about shitty people. And those shitty people pretend to care about them and they don't. It's just that simple. So that is my topic for today. I feel like I've been brewing this one for a while, and it's been fueled by like reading stupid shit and documentaries. And I believe, go check out Jesse Gender's The Unending Lies of Matt Walsh. It's incredible. It's 4 hours. Highly recommended. If you care about me, if you care about trans people, sit down and watch that. It is mind-blowing, the level at which conservatives have misconstrued facts and contorted things and changed things to fit their agenda. It's quite disgusting. Anyway, I really wish you all the best. I have been really getting back into Elden Ring. This is the vinyl soundtrack box behind me. It's so beautiful. But I'm going to be playing some more of Elden Ring. The DLC is probably going to get announced soon. I've been diving into the lore of Elden Ring, and I just love it so much. I'm going to be getting an Elden Ring tattoo next. I don't know. I feel like I've nerded out on Elden Ring. And Thanksgiving's coming up. Tomorrow's my birthday. We have lots of things coming up right now. It's the holiday season, and I just want to wish everyone the best. Find happiness within yourself. You don't need approval from anyone else. Just be who you want to be. Be who you are. Love yourself for that. And if sometimes you make a mistake and you realize that you made a mistake and your actions were just a reflection of your own insecurity, it's okay to be like, okay, I'm going to learn from that and move on. That's the whole point of life. I mean, you've got to learn, grow up, and move on with your life. Anyway, I hope y'all are well. I will make a new video soon, and I am going to be doing some Elden Ring playing this week, hopefully. So y'all have a great day.